Today's video is going to be something a little interesting, something a little bit different. So, I have decided that this year, this season, is going to be the year that I finally dip my toe into the Premier League. Up to this point, I have pretty much exclusively watched the German Bundesliga, and I love the Bundesliga. I'm not going to stop watching the Bundesliga, but the Premier League is the biggest league. It's in English, and it's very easily accessible for me, especially because I now have a streaming package that includes it. And the Bundesliga is not as simple for me to watch here. I have to basically go through unscrupulous means. Now, for me to watch a league, get into a league, I have to have some sort of rooting interest. And I've always struggled over and over again every time I have tried to connect with any English club. Lord knows I've tried many times to connect to different English clubs, and I just, for one reason or another, can't really do it. So I decided if I was going to do it this time and I was going to make it stick, I had to find a way to choose a club and to determine a club that would get me invested in it. And I sort of used like some rules on what I didn't want, and then I used this other criteria to determine what I did want. So, first off, no member of the Big Six. That's not me. I'll put on the screen now all of the sports teams that I traditionally have supported and been a fan of over the course of my life. And you'll notice of these teams, only like one or two have any sort of modicum of success. I like rooting for underdogs. I find rooting on a frontrunner quite boring, personally. Especially if it's not, it's one thing to have the local team that you grew up watching be the frontrunners, and that's cool. But I don't live in the UK. I'm choosing a team. I can pick any team, and I don't want to pick a frontrunner. It's just not my personality. So, no member of the Big Six. That's sort of the big rule. But then I have just some other little minor rules here. I have to like the colors. Obviously, if I like the team, if I'm gonna watch the team, I have to like the way they look. It just means I also have to like the badge. And like the kids, like the jerseys. If the color is ugly and the badge is ugly and the jersey's ugly, and I'm not gonna like the team, I'm sorry, maybe I just can't do it. Also, it has to be in a city that I want to visit. Speaking as somebody who took on the Tokyo Yakult Swallows as my Japanese baseball team, one of the best experiences I've had in my life was traveling to Japan, going to Meiji Jingu Stadium, and being there in the stands watching this team that, to that point, I'd only been able to watch on a television screen from thousands of miles away. I love traveling. I love sports, and two of my favorite hobbies, and combining those is important to me, so it has to be a club in a city that I would want to visit and spend time in, and make going and seeing the team play and being part of that tourism experience. And the last major rule here has to be a fan base that I do not find annoying. Over the years of online interaction, I've interacted with fans of probably every major club in the world, and some of them I find quite intolerable. I will not list or say here who those are, but some of them, and it's for different reasons. Some of them it's not the same reason for all of them. Some of them I find very aggressive and loud and annoying. Some of them I find very moralizing and holier than thou, and I hate them both for different reasons. So those are that's how I am excluding teams. But now I need to talk about how I am including teams. And I used basically just one criteria here, but that was looking at my family history. As I mentioned a little bit in the past, but I am really into genealogy and tracking my family, my family's migration out of Europe to the United States, going back to the 1500s, 1600s, 14, going back hundreds of years. I find it endlessly fascinating. And over the course of that research, I have discovered ancestral homes in England where my ancestors emigrated out of. Now, most of the British ancestry I have is actually outside of England. It was in Ireland and Wales and Scotland, more so. But there were two cities in England that my family emigrated out of historically. So I looked there for a connection. Okay, maybe a club in one of those cities that my family lived in once upon a time. And then also, I found that I have extended relatives living in 3 cities in the UK currently. So that left me with 5 total cities for which to try to find a team to support. So, the 2 cities where I currently have living family members, or excuse me, the 3 cities, I currently have family living in Manchester, in Leeds, and in York. Those are the 3 cities I have currently living ancestors, and then historically, my family, back in the 1500s and 1600s, they lived in Norwich, and they lived in Newcastle upon Tyne. So looking at those, I kind of got this bundle of clubs with which to sift through. Not all of them are in the Premier League, but they're all in the English football pyramid somewhere. I don't mind watching a lower league club. I actually really like watching the Championship, but so the list of clubs I was sort of left with was Manchester City, Manchester United, Bolton Wanderers, Stockport County, Wigan Athletic, Salford City, Oldham Athletic, Norwich City, Newcastle United, Leeds United, and York City FC. And I spent a number of days, so first of all, immediately based on my rules, we have eliminated Manchester City and Manchester United. They're both members of the Big Six, and I would not really history and watching highlights and this, that, and the other. Now, right off the bat, I eliminated Norwich City. They were never in contention. I've said many times, Norwich City's color combination, that green and the yellow, is like my least favorite color combination in sports. I really, really dislike it. I think they have really ugly kits. Not disrespect Norwich City, because I also think they have like the best goal song. So, they're doing some things right. I know that I would never purchase and wear a Norwich City kit. I know I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I worked my way through all of the other Manchester clubs, Bolton Wanderers, Starmore County, Wigan Athletic, Salford City, Oldham Athletic, and none of them connected to me, spoke to me on any sort of level whatsoever. They were all boop, 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 boop. Just some things stuck out to me. It's just I wasn't feeling it. So I left with 3 clubs. And I'm going to tell you right now, all 3 of these clubs, I can't. I do have a ranking, I'll put that at the end, but I'm struggling to pick one. So my plan is, over the course of this season, to watch these 3 clubs, and somewhere along the line I'll kind of shake out, and one I'll notice one is getting more attention, one I'm enjoying more, and that'll be how I make my decision. So Newcastle United, Leeds United, and York City FC now. If you're a fan of any of these clubs, either of these 3 clubs, or you have any strong opinions on them one way or the other, leave it in the comments down below, because I will take your input on board, but I'll totally, I have to vibe with it as well. But I kind of did pros and cons for all of these, and just sort of where my head's at with them. So Newcastle United, we'll start with the pros. They're nicknamed the Magpies. Magpies are like my favorite bird. Before moving here to Australia, I'd never encountered any. We only had crows. I'm pretty sure that's all of the United States, but maybe in other parts of the country outside of where I was living, there are magpies, but after encountering them here for the first time, I've fallen in love. Magpies are just so cool. I want to get a magpie tattoo at some point. The Newcastle badge, very cool looking. The 2 seahorses on the side that are sort of outside the little shield. Very interesting, very cool touch. Very unique badge. Newcastle's a very cool, very interesting city, historic city, lots of bridges. I believe they have 7 bridges. Sort of reminds me of Portland in a way, where I grew up. Portland has a lot of bridges. Your city there on the river Tyne, Newcastle upon Tyne. Lots and lots and lots of history, ancient city. Very nice big cathedral there. Also I've heard the Geordies, the people living there in Newcastle, very friendly, open, welcoming people. It's a working class city, which I like that. I think I'd struggle to support a rich city club, a rich people club. I know Fulham has that reputation, Chelsea has that reputation, a lot of the London clubs. But Newcastle's a working class city, maritime history, industrial history. The colors, black and white, not the most exciting, but they're also not too harsh. And they're also colors that work well with other clothing. So if I had a Newcastle United beanie or Newcastle United scarf, I could throw it on with a a t-shirt and whatever, and it wouldn't look out of place, it wouldn't clash. Stadium, St. James Park, amazing historic stadium, beautiful stadium. One of the best in England, one of the best in Europe. And finally, Newcastle United does have a local supporters club here in Sydney. There's a bar in Sydney called Cheers. And there is a New South Wales Newcastle United supporters group who meets there every game. They all hang out. They have custom flags and scarves that they've made up. And it gives me a community to go be a part of and watch the game with. Now, cons of Newcastle, and this is a big con. Saudi investment fund ownership. And that's a con in a couple of different ways, actually. Obviously, the oil money aspect of it, and for being honest, the blood money aspect of it, right? But also, like, looking that Saudi investment group, they have other priorities. Newcastle probably isn't the top of their list the way that Manchester City is for the Qataris, right? They have the Saudi Pro League going on. They have Live Golf, which I believe Live Golf is like their top priority. They have like all these sort of construction projects. These things are trying to get off the ground, and not to mention, even though now, like, oh, the Saudis and all the cash and splashing cash, my personal opinion is that will come to an end sooner rather than later. And even though Newcastle United has had this influx of money now, it might not last, because from what I understand, the Saudi Pro League is losing like $1 billion a year. The break-even point, Saudi Arabia has taken on so much debt with all these recent projects and investment fund things they're doing. They're taking out loans to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. As well as taking out bonds to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars to pay interest on loans. And from what I understand, the break-even price for them to be able to service their financial obligations using oil money is like 88 or 89 dollars a barrel. And right now oil is at like $65 to $68 a barrel. So they're quite a ways off their break-even point, and as they invest more and more, that break-even point will only go higher. And so you're like, well, gas prices need to go up for them to invest money into this. So it's this whole thing. Like, you look at things like the line and Neom, and originally there's these massive things in 2030, 150 kilometers. Now it's like 2 kilometers, and they pushed the opening date back like 30 years, and a lot of red flags. So there's dysfunction as well in Newcastle. They do not have a CEO. They do not have a director of football. It's taken them years and years. They're going to build this whole brand new training ground, and they just haven't built it yet. So there is dysfunction as well. So there are definitely major cons. Now we come to Leeds United. Pros of Leeds, they have a very passionate fan base, and I've spoken before, I'm a big fan of the Away Days YouTube channel. He's a big Leeds fan, and watching that channel I've gotten a glimpse into that fan base, their passion, what they're like, and I think they're a very endearing club. And even prior to this search, I've always had a soft spot for Leeds United, and similar to Newcastle, Leeds has a local supporters club here in Sydney. They also meet in the Cheers bar, so it's a group that I'll be able to hang out with, people that are fans I'd be able to watch games with. Also, Leeds being a Yorkshire club, the White Rose, big fan of that. Ellen Road. Sorry, it's late. Again, another historic stadium. I think maybe a step below St. James Park. Although Leeds fans might kill me, and I might regret that. But St. James Park may be more prestigious, but still an amazing historic stadium. Cons for Leeds. Again, ownership for now. Not to the same degree, right? But Leeds is owned by the 49ers, and I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. The 49ers are my sworn nemesis. And they are also partly owned by Red Bull, and there was this whole debacle and fear that they would be rebranded as like RB Leeds or whatever. And I personally have a lot of issues with the Red Bull sports, like football takeover model they've been doing with RB Leipzig, Salzburg, New York Red Bulls, all this stuff. I really, really dislike what they're doing. So for me, the idea of giving money to not only the 49ers, but also Red Bull, maybe a little bit upsetting. Also, of these three cities, Newcastle upon Tyne, York, and Leeds, I think Leeds, and again this is an outsider's perspective, I've never seen there, this is simply watching videos, looking at images. I think it's the least interesting city of the three. Newcastle and York are both very, very old. I think they were both founded by the Romans back when it was Roman Britannia. Whereas I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe Leeds is newer than that. I don't believe Leeds was part of that. And Newcastle and York, again, just from what I have seen, have more of that historic architecture. In Newcastle, you have the Shambles. I believe that's what it's called, is the Shambles, or is that New York that is the Shambles? One of the two. That was the inspiration for Diagon Alley and Harry Potter, but and castles, and York is the big massive cathedral there, the Minster, the York Minster and all that, and whereas Leeds is maybe a bit more modern looking. So we come now to York City. York City has perhaps the best sports jersey of any team I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, the three that they have out right now are so amazing. I want to buy all three of them. Also, York is an amazing city. Like I said, founded by the Romans in like 71 AD. And then eventually they were conquered by the Vikings. York was part of Scandinavian Britain. That whole Anglo-Saxon thing. And they have all of that in their kits. They have like Viking longships and runes and all that stuff in the kits. And I love all that stuff. I love my Norwegian heritage. Also, York City is a very engaged ownership. A lot of people call them like next Wrexham. They had an influx of cash. All that stuff. But now cons with York City FC. They are in the National League, and like I said, I don't mind supporting teams on the Premier League, Championship, or League One even, that's fine. But they're in the National League, they're in non-league, so not only do they have to win promotion to League 2, then they have to win promotion to League 1, then to the Championship, and then to Premier League. And that's a really, really tough task, and those are meat grinder leagues. There are clubs that get stuck down there for decades and decades, and you're seeing it now with Wrexham. Wrexham climbed their way up to the Championship, but they're struggling in the Championship now. I don't think they'll get promoted to the Premier League, and New York City is a very, very tall task ahead of them. Also, of these three clubs, York City is the only one that does not have a local supporters club. Newcastle and Leeds, I can go down to the bar. illegal stream because there's no way for me to watch the National League legally here. I have to watch it through unscrupulous means. Also, because it's the National League, there's no way for me to get merchandise here. No way at all. You know, Premier League, all that stuff is, I can either buy it on the internet, I can go buy it at Rebel, at Target, wherever, like they have it in stores. Even the championship, some of the bigger championship clubs, you can go buy that stuff. National League, no way. Can't get any of that merchandise. The team store, like they want to run their own stores. Like you have to go to YorkCityFC.com, go to their team shop. They don't ship internationally. They don't, like, there's no way for me to get even their kits. It's just not possible. And also they have a very small stadium, I think maybe like 7,000 seats. And also the club does not own the stadium. That's not an issue now, but if they're trying to climb to the Premier League, I believe once you get to League One in the Championship, there are requirements on how big your stadium has to be that I don't believe they meet. And so, you know, it's like, will they even be able to compete up there? So there's a lot of question marks, but there's a lot of positives around all of these. So my plan is, like I said, over the course of this season, I'm going to be watching all three of these clubs and just seeing what happens. I've already watched a York City FC match. They were playing Southend United, ended in a 0-0 draw. Pretty fun game. I watched that. That was good. And I'm going to watch Leeds this week. I believe Leeds has... Where are they playing this week? They played Everton. Yeah, I didn't see that match, but I saw that they beat Everton with the penalty. That was sort of like controversial. So Leeds is playing Arsenal this week, and Newcastle's playing Liverpool this week. So I decided this week I was gonna watch the Leeds game because I want to see this Arsenal side. And so I thought this would be a good matchup to watch. And then next week, I'm going to watch Newcastle. Then the week after that, I'm going to watch York City again, then Leeds and Newcastle. And I'll sort of circle through. But at the moment, my preliminary ranking, I'm feeling number 1, Newcastle United. Number 2 is York City FC, and I have Leeds currently 3rd on that list. But this all could all change. And again, welcome to any and all input, feedback, commentary about this whole process in the comments down below. But that's it for me, guys. I've been locked onto this the last couple weeks trying to get to the bottom of all this. I appreciate you listening to me now. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this every single week. Until next time, guys.